Okay, just let's take a minute now and switch to the blue paper and reverse our process. Where if I give you the graph, can you give me back the inequality? So just a reminder, the shaded area, which is in red here, is representing that x. So we're comparing it to the number where we have the dot. So how does x compare to the 2? Well, x is greater than 2, and we know it's greater than because of it being an open circle, which if we want to check it and think, 6 is a possible answer for us. And so if I put 6 inside of my inequality, 6 is greater than 2, so I know I'm correct. And yes, before you ask, it is okay to also write it in this format where 2 is less than x. Because notice in either case, that little alligator mouth, if that's how you were taught it in second grade, is still gobbling up the x. So if we go through and we look at the bottom one, where we have a closed circle to 6 and x is our shaded spot there, here we're seeing x is then less than or equal to that 6. When we look at the examples that have multiple dots, we have to decide first off, is it an and or an or situation? Whenever we have two portions of the graph like we see here, we then know that this guy is going to then be an or situation because we're getting an answer where in this case x is less than or equal to 0, which accomplishes that side, or x is greater than 6, which describes the other side. Where we have the inequality where the shading is in between, this is the and situation, where again, x is represented by that shaded area. So we have an example here where x is greater than 3 and x is less than 7, which could be written with the format, with the minimum maximum format, where 3 is less than x, which is less than 7, which still satisfies this idea where here I'm gobbling the x when we talk about the 3 portion, which I get in that portion, but then I'm also gobbling the 7, which I get whenever I look at that part of the combined compound inequality. Why don't you hit pause and try these two? If you check your two answers here, the top one is an and situation and the bottom one is an or situation. And again, watch your symbols, making sure that you're putting in the correct notation. Hit pause and try the next two examples. Now let's take a minute and go through and see what happens whenever we have situationals, right? And the hardest part here is trying to decide if it's going to be a less than or equal to, greater than equal to. So if we think about the situation here where we want to drink at least 6 glasses of water every day, I'm going to use G for the amount of water we're going to drink, and we're going to compare that to 6. And so I know I want to be going through and I want to be drinking, the greater than, right? My amount of water I want to be drinking here needs to be, compared to the 6. And I need it to be more than 6. But do I want to be including 6? And the answer to that is yes. When we say we want to drink at least 6 glasses, that means 6 is included. If we talk about the temperature being below freezing, if we look at this next example, T for temperature, freezing, should be 32 degrees, and the temperature is below that. That means this number here is less than that 32, right? Below freezing means we're going to be under that 32. If with the example where I want to spend at most $10 on Mr. Haladio's birthday gift, so let's use B for birthday gift, and I'm going to compare that to the 10. And we have to stop and think, is it acceptable for me to spend $10? If I say I want to spend at most $10, well, okay, I know $9 would be okay, but is 10 okay? So if I'm thinking I want to spend at most $10, then yes, $10 would be okay to spend because I'm including that 10. Now this last example, unfortunately, it's not, my kids are too old for this now if we stop and we think about this, because my kids are older than this now. But back in the day, my sons loved to go to the Eagle's Nest in Giant Eagle while I would grocery shop. And their rule, written right there, said that they were allowed to start attending once they turned 3. But once they turned 10, they were too old. So if we think about my son's age being, we'll do A for age. So their age, I know I'm going to be comparing it to 3 and to 10. Now, when they were 3, whether it was 3 in 1 day or 3 in 6 months, they were still the age of 3. So I would have the less than or equal to symbol there, because then their age was greater than or equal to 3. But whenever I go through and think about this now and compare it to the 10, I then have to say, well, once they hit 10, they were no longer allowed to work. So on their 10th birthday or 10th birthday plus 2 days, they were no longer allowed to attend the eagle's nest. So it would just be a less than symbol for the upper part of that compound inequality. That finishes the notes for this page, so make sure you glue everything down.